Good evening, everyone. David Fryhead here, episode 2 of Viva PPC, documenting my journey running for the People's Party of Canada for the riding of Westmount and NDG. The title of this week's episode is "A Government Subsidized Media is a Corrupt Media." But before we even get there, I've got to thank everybody for the donations that have come in to date. It has exceeded my expectations within 24 hours, and I haven't even issued a formal ask for donations, which I'm reluctant to do. I hate asking for donations, but obviously the more money that we have in the coffers, the broader we can spread the message. But as it is, my goodness, we have enough to make some waves already. So thank everyone who has donated. Just, a few disclaimers. You have to be Canadian to donate, and we have set it so that only Canadian credit cards are being accepted. Maximum donation is $1,650, which we've set as a limit as well. Thank you all who have donated. You know who you are. I think there's 105 of you as of now. Thank you all. Okay, on to the subject matter of this episode. A government subsidized media is a corrupt media. We are seeing in real time what happens when the government subsidizes the media and what ends up happening to the media. Bottom line, it's an incestuous relationship that leads to corruption. People don't really know. I wasn't aware of this. I heard of the defund the CBC movement way back in the day, but never understood the scope and extent of it, but I don't think it was the same as it is now. The Liberal federal government is giving upwards, I think a little more, than $1 billion a year. $1 billion to the CBC, Canada Broadcasting Company. It's something like 70% of its revenue comes from federal funding. What do you think happens when the federal government subsidizes the media? When the federal government basically gives the money to the media so that they can survive? The argument for why they need this government taxpayer dollars is because traditional media, radio, television is declining, internet's picking up, there's more competition, as if more competition is the reason to get government subsidies and not adapt to the competition, but whatever. That's the argument. The government, the federal government, the Liberal Trudeau federal government is giving $1 billion a year to the CBC. How do you think that might affect their reporting? How does one reasonably logical person think that might affect their reporting? You don't have to guess to know how it affects their reporting. It results in massively biased, whitewashing bad news, focusing on bad news of opposing parties, demonizing opposing parties while giving basically a pass to the government that literally feeds you. The government that drops loads of buckets of cash into your hands. It leads to, not necessarily being as vigorous on that government as you might otherwise be, because they hold the sword of Damocles over your head. They can cut you off and shut you down because you can't survive on your own. And we've seen this in real time. We've seen the CBC basically give a pass to Justin Trudeau on the most egregious of scandals. And I've done tons of vlogs on this before I had any interest in running for politics. But it was seeing these scandals, multiple scandals, that convinced me I think I have to at this point, because if we don't, nobody is going to stand up to the institutionalized corruption. But the media giving a pass to Justin Trudeau on his Aga Khan scandal. That's the scandal where Aga Khan Foundation, which was receiving $50 some odd million from the federal government, gave Justin Trudeau an all-inclusive vacation to the Aga Khan private islands. And Justin Trudeau didn't think it was necessary to run this by the Ethics Commission or declare it as a gift. Led to an ethics violation. The second scandal was Jody Wilson-Raybould, the Minister of Justice, Attorney General, fired by Justin Trudeau because Jody Wilson-Raybould was saying that they should prosecute SNC-Lavalin and not give them a deferred prosecution agreement. And, come here, get over here. And Justin Trudeau, for whatever the reason, didn't want SNC getting prosecuted. The argument was that it was going to cost Canadian jobs, if anybody believes that argument, and I don't think many people do. That was the argument. And so Justin Trudeau pressured Mojag not to prosecute, and when Jody Wilson-Raybould decided to criminally prosecute SNC-Lavalin, she was shuffled out of the cabinet, basically fired. Justin Trudeau, it's 2020, hires the first female Aboriginal Minister of Justice, Attorney General, only to fire her when she doesn't heed to his corrupt demands. Second ethics violation. You have the stuff going back to the year 2000 with the alleged groping of the reporter and the apology for that incident, the pictures heard around the world. But the media gave a pass to Justin Trudeau because had it been anyone else, the media would have been clamoring for their imprisonment. Had his hair been slightly oranger than the dark, beautiful, wavy brown, had his socks been less fanciful than the socks of the current, I'm tongue in cheek. Had it been anyone else, had it been Harper, had it been, God forbid, anyone like Trump in Canada, the media would have been clamoring for imprisonment. But the media that is surviving off the subsidies doesn't really want to put out of power the government that is subsidizing them and potentially put into power the government that wants to defund them. That's what happens. But this is the ultimate sickness of the CBC getting $1 billion in federal funding. They're so strapped for cash, they need to compel $1 billion of taxpayer dollars. That's my money going to fund the CBC, and I'm not necessarily too happy about it. I tend to like to pay for things of quality, and I tend to like to show my support by way of paying and not having it taken out of my back pocket at the end of every year and funneled off to this company. But while the CBC is so strapped for cash, what do they do in 2018? They sue the Conservative government for copyright infringement because the federal government, the Harper government or the Conservative government, whoever it was back then, used CBC material in a Twitter video, and CBC argued and sued on the basis that it was copyright infringement. Forget the fair use stuff. Forget the political use. Forget the non-commercial use. They used short clips in a video montage for their Conservative campaign, and the CBC took them to court, tried to get an injunction, which is a very costly procedure. And ultimately, I think it was 2 years later, the lawsuit got tossed on the merits. They're so strapped for cash, they've got to sue the Conservatives for copyright infringement, spend however many hundreds of thousands of dollars, taxpayer dollars. That's how strapped for cash they are. And incidentally, not to say, but what about them? The Liberal government, from what I understand, also used some clips from the CBC. No injunction, no lawsuit, and why would they? Because they are literally bought and paid for by the government through this subsidy. It is, I don't care if it's the Liberal government doing it, Conservative, or any government. The second the government subsidizes the media, you no longer have an independent media. The media has become a mouthpiece for the government. And we've had a similar problem in Quebec in the context of the pandemic. The François Legault government spending $150 million a year on COVID awareness. Do you know what that means? That's advertising. That is the government spending $13 million a month buying ad space on radio, television, print. That is $13 million a month. That's a lot of money, especially when you're dealing with media companies who are starved for ad revenue. And so what ends up happening? Well, if they buy ads on a channel, they want to make sure that that channel, that radio station, is running a message that supports the government. And Radio X out of Quebec City had a similar problem where their message was not necessarily blindly pro-government, stroking Legault's ego. They were highly critical of the government, highly critical of some of the response. And what ended up happening? The government and government entities pulled their advertising from Radio X in an attempt to basically punish them, basically get the radio station to fire the two hosts who were espousing, promoting, discussing unfavorable opinions of the government. They tried to get them to be unemployed and unemployable by pulling their ad revenue. They used their ad revenue, they used their $13 million a month in COVID awareness to pressure a message from the media. And if that is not corrupt government coercion, I don't know what is. But that is what happens when the government uses its money to basically buy off, pacify, and lure in a media. You no longer have an independent media. They become mouthpieces to the government, or they become so dependent on the government subsidies that they are scared and afraid to be honest and critical of that government. And luckily, with Radio X, it didn't work because the message is resonating to the point where they don't need to survive off that government funding. But the bottom line, anytime the government funds any media, they have to fund all the media, not just the media that they like. Anytime that they buy ad space on a radio station, on a television station, they have to buy it from all in equal proportions so that there is no buying a message from those media agencies. But that is how a government subsidized media is a corrupt media. In real time, we've seen it, and I have lived it and learned it over the last 3 years, and it's got to end. It has to end. Otherwise, you just end up living in a state where the state, the government, controls the media, but wink, wink, clin d'oeil, as we say in French, and not in the standard corrupt manners that we see in the movies, but in the insidious, you know what to do, and we know what we can do because we know the nature of the relationship. It is still corruption, just by a more subtler appearance. Now, with that said, stay tuned for episode 3. Links if you want to donate to the campaign are going to be in the pinned comment. Share this around, share the message around. I'm not monetizing this channel, so it's going to be a little tougher for YouTube to want to recommend it. There's no financial interest for YouTube to recommend it. And if you see ads on these commercials, they are not mine. I am not running ads on this. I have not monetized this so that no one accuses me of trying to make money off of the channel that is documenting my journey for PPC, Westmount, Notre-Dame-de-Grâce, Marc Garneau. It's going to be a fun election. I have high hopes. Enjoy the scenery. Peace out.